Hey, Shan, you here?
Hey, Dato, yep, I'm sure here.
Well, I guess we can probably start. People are getting up. Hey, everybody. Like to keep things organized. Basically, if you have something to say or you want to express your opinions on stuff, just state that down in the chat and we'll let you in. Because otherwise, it's going to be a mess here.
Yep, and just to familiarize everybody with the format, we plan to hold a live fireside chat once every 2 weeks or so. Um, Sometimes it might just be between core members. Sometimes we might have guests from various networks to talk about topics that in general will relate to Humanode. And I guess sometimes, we could have sessions where we talk about whatever. But for this session, for this fireside, we want to talk about community ownership because this isn't something that we really talked about in our paper or in our articles yet. So, Dato, do you want to start out?
Yeah, we don't really want to call it community ownership yet. We're looking for a name for it, but so that people won't just remember as it is.
Yeah,
But
well, actually, yeah, one
yeah,
one thing that I want to say here in the beginning is that towards the end of this fireside, um, and not just this fireside, but we'll continue on for probably a couple weeks. But we want to come up with a term that represents this concept of community ownership that we'll be talking about. We are calling it co-ownership just you know for lack of a better word right now. But
not just referred to as something else.
mhm. So what
I
do you?
mean, Shen, do you can you think about real life examples that can describe this thing in not blockchain terms?
Hmm. Well, I mean,
Was there like
it,
a single directly auditable public good out there? I can't really.
yeah, I've been trying to think about this, over the past couple of weeks here, and I mean, there are terms for co-ownership. It's you know as simple as that, co-ownership, or if you're a equal shareholder in a company or LLC, I mean, you have equal ownership, uh, and you have, I guess, depending on the structure, equal rights. But what we're talking about here is, I mean, the whole structure of Humanode isn't, one company owns it all, and you have your investors and you have the general public and the community. But uh, yes, we have a core team that is formulating things and are putting things into an action based on our vision here. But we we will be expanding this to everybody who participates, everybody in the whole community here, and who.
That starts to sound like socialist. Is it socialist? I mean, um, basically, there's like a problem in anything that's being created by communities.
Mhm.
Like, how do you really understand what belongs to whom if community is contributing to build something together? I mean,
Mhm.
it's a common problem, with open source projects. They're basically everywhere. That there are a lot of different computer contributors to that, and
Mhm.
if there's no real life incentive of financing some stuff, it just stalls in development. That's a
Mhm.
that's a really big problem.
Well, um, let me say, when if you're talking about a normal company structure, right? you have the shareholders. The shareholders invest in the company, and using that investment, you develop products or whatever, and the ownership basically, I mean, it's the company is the owner, but the shareholders are the owner of the company. Therefore, uh, they they have co-ownership, so we say, right?
But I mean, in this situation, like shareholders are not really working with their hands, right? Their contribution is solely in terms of finance.
Monetary, yeah.
Yeah. You know, as Humanode is going to be a network decentralized on equal peers, which are basically deployed through biometric processing of real human beings.
Mhm.
It is interesting to state that there's like a thing that we call co-ownership for now, that is basically a public good that is being scaled to the number of validators, and they like own that public good equally, regardless of how many validators are there. I mean, if there's like a 5,000, then it's scaled so that 5,000 people can own it, in the equal amounts. And if for some reason the number of validator gets like higher, and we have like 10,000 people, then this right of ownership is automatically scaled to basically that number of people. And that's like a liquid system of owning stuff that is basically uh, created on top of this protocol. And yeah, it faces lots of challenges in legal terms as well, because you got like an organization that is constantly changing in terms of uh, ownership structure, and at the same time, people are actually a part of it because they are providing their biometrics to safeguard the system from Sybil resistance.
Mhm.
I mean Sybil attacks, though.
Yeah. And I mean, just okay, let's think about this in, I guess, well, let's start out with monetary terms, I guess. A lot of the projects will be funded through the investment, and then there's the foundation, right? Yeah.
There's also always a foundation, but those foundations are, it's the legal side of the question here. So they only exist because our system requires them to exist, so that we all don't go to jail and stuff like this.
Well, David, how do you see this? Uh, how do you see this working?
I mean, improve work, improve state based systems. The validators are really different in terms of the stake, and there's like in delegated proof stake systems, there's like a bunch of validators that are sitting on top, and the question of ownership that they're like creating for the system is not really a question, though, because they're like the validators, and then there's also like a foundation company that really delivers the code, because mostly validators are not really like, some of them are coders, but most of them are just entrepreneurs uh, supporting the system.
Mhm.
Basically, in Humanode, all validators are equal in terms of voting and validation power. And that means that everything that we build is scaled to be owned by every single person participating in the network. And there is like no legal framework attached to that thing. It's just purely innovative in terms that there's like a right or a service being provided on chain that is like, how can I say this? That's being like propagated to every single agent in the system in liquid state, because validators can hop in and they can help out. So, yeah. I mean,
so yeah, I mean, you know, there are. I mean, talking about it legally, yes, there. Quite sure there's going to be some challenges, but at the same time, if you think about, you know, what we are trying to accomplish here in the long term, it is, you know, the most logical system. I mean, we're trying to create this shall I say, global enterprise here that benefits all participants.
well,
We're trying to give equal voice to the participants of the network.
you know, it's like it's better if I like give an example of such thing. You know, so
Okay, go ahead.
for example, we're going to like there are like different technological stacks involved in Humanode, and one of them, for example, is like decentralized liveness detection of human beings. You know, so that there is like a special system that that uses neural networks to understand whether it's a real human being or not in front of the device. And you know, it is very important that we are able to audit every single transaction that goes through, like so that every node inside the system owns this neural network that delivers liveness detection in equal manner. Otherwise, for example, if there was a bunch of validators that were like working as a cartel sitting on liveness detection, they would be able to spoof and spawn multiple you know, accounts and identities if other validators didn't have, you know, rights to audit what's happening inside. So we also create a co-ownership of decentralized liveness detection that is like it is like a public good because everyone uses it every single time they want to verify their existence through biometrics. But at the same time, it's accessible by every node validator to audit any single transaction that's happening inside and be sure that, you know, it's not just fake identity spoofing on the network. But, you know, there's like a third characteristic to that as well, I think. And I've talked about this already. It's like the scale of this thing. If there are small validators, then it should be distributed in another way when the number of validators changes. And it's a challenge to build such a thing, you know.
So, you know, when you talk about scaling, you know, obviously, you know, we've talked about starting out with, you know, anywhere from 1,000 at the initial stage to about, you know, 10,000 validators at the start. How big would you expect this pool of validators to grow?
Well, that's a very good question, Shannon. You know, we're initially aiming at like 10,000 people because, well, even coordinating 1,000 people has a very big overhead for, you know, coordinated attacks on the system. But what's probably is like the best solution here is like have bulks of validators enlarge with the number and the, you know, the time that goes on. And I mean, when we're sure that most of the validators that joined us have gone through proof time and proof devotion systems, you know, and are more or less reliable, then we can like as anything that goes in Humanode, we can have a vote through Vortex, and basically, you know, decide how many validators we want to, you know, have in the network. We can shrink this, we can like enlarge this number, and stuff like this.
So okay, let's say, we we start out with, 10,000. Do you see this at any time growing to, let's say, 100,000 or a million?
Well, I hope that like in 4 years' time, there's like from 100,000 to a million validators. But the end goal here is that there's no like permission of how many validators we can have. I mean, the goal is to have a system where a person can become a validator anytime he wants to become one, simply through biometric encryption of his biologically unique things on his body or inside it.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is like, why do we have to limit the amount of validators we have now? Is mostly due to the um, underlying hard specs and technological specs that we're utilizing, and we're just um, conducting hundreds and thousands verification of existence in a month. It's a challenging thing to carry
Mm-hmm.
out with all the bandwidth and the size of biometric templates, the size of the neural network SDKs required to conduct the operation. It's like it's all about the bandwidth. So it doesn't take people uh, several weeks to verify their existence or more.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more there are like people being like validator nodes, the more every single transaction that is carrying out search and matching operations in a database, it has to go through much more like biometric templates before it hits the one it wants to hit. And the more there are like embedded templates in the database, well, it really affects the precision of the matching operation, and it drops significantly.
Mm-hmm. So what it comes down to is technological advancement and continued development to scale,
Yep.
which requires uh, not only the few people we have here, but the community really growing and bringing in more talent. But one thing that throughout this project, one thing that I've always um, thought of is, I mean, not not to say, oh, this is going to be socialist, whatever, but um, when you have big companies, and there are two things. One is when you have big companies controlling your private data or controlling your biometrics or whatever, it can become a nightmare scenario very quickly. I mean, you're under the thumb of a few people who have a lot of power and a lot of money, and they tend to want to keep it that way. So if we're talking about a a system that deals with biometrics, at least personally, I'd feel much more comfortable if this system was not under the hands of a few elite or a few billionaires, meaning a more uh, public system where people have uh, they actually have more stake in it rather than just their biometrics, but also have a say in it becomes really important. And the other thing is when you're developing, I mean, any kind of systems, any kind of infrastructure, any kind of company, actually, you can build some wonderful things. You can build wonderful infrastructure. You can do governments or whatever, but unless it involves uh, everybody who's affected, unless it involves a wider community, it tends to get very one-sided. And, um, and if it's not inclusive, it really dampens the growth, shall we say. And it turns
But
out that, yeah, you're not really interested in it because you didn't have say in it. But if we're able to create a system that balances both, that gives broader ownership, of course, with uh, guidance and clear vision, um, and gives voice, it has the potential of being something much greater without having the risk of being turning into a quote unquote monopoly.
I mean, even if you have like a crowdsourced, public-oriented system, you would have like subjectively have developers that are basically building that from the very beginning, and that more know more much about the system than others will kind of still arise as the leaders that are controlling
Hmm.
status. So I don't really know if whether like there's a solution to the concentration of um, some vision around a platform in the hands of a few, because like not everyone can build it.
That's true. I mean, there will be some concentration, in whatever system it is. There will be, you know, the few stars that will be contributing a lot and leading the projects. But as we all know, um, every single person is replaceable. And, especially, we have the vision and we're starting to head in a direction. Yes, there will be the people, you know, leading it. They'll be holding the torch, marching forward in the darkness. But if the torch is properly lit, the person holding the torch uh, can fall and die, and the person standing behind them will pick up the torch and march on forward.
Now, we have thought about um, dealing with the problem of contributions to the ecosystem,
Hmm.
and we really want to kind of through vortex and formation make it so that any code review, any like um, pull request, any contribution to like repositories of the open source code of Humanode would uh, deliver some proof of devotion to the person actually making it, right?
Hmm.
Now imagine if there's a group of people that have gathered up, that have created a proposal on Humanode to create a service or a public good for people, so that they could create something good for the network itself. Although this like three people got their devotion and stuff like this, um, they're like the thing they have created from scratch will be attached to the system, and as of now it will be the ownership of this thing will not be left in their hands but be distributed among every single validator inside the system, and they will have the same like say in the questions regarding that public good as anybody else. Now do you see like this being fair?
Well, I guess it comes down to, I mean, obviously you have to create a system in where there's a balance. Of course, you'll be gaining proof of devotion, which gives you more say in general. But and I'm assuming that many of these developments will be done um, through the formation, and there will be some financial incentive. But yeah, I mean, the question is really, how do you balance the reward for work and the matter of ownership?
Okay, then another case, for example, it's about balancing the rewards. So some guys create something for the ecosystem, right? Now they request some funds from the ecosystem to accommodate for the expenses, and they don't take a lot, like maybe $1,000, for example. And later on, what they build scales so much and just blows up inside the ecosystem. Everyone's using it, and what they got was $1,000. Does that seem fair?
No, actually, I mean, it might be important to, for example, inventors for technologies. They get, and this is not in the world, I guess, of open source, but let's say for a company, you invent something, even if you are an employee of a company and you invent something under the in the labs of the company while receiving a salary and bonuses and whatnot, you still get a small percentage, whatever the percentage is, from the sales of the goods as an inventor. Is this something that would be good to implement, or is this something that is there other ways of working with this? If
Well,
there's, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, if you're making somebody pay for the public good, it's not really a public good.
True.
Right? Or simply put, if you're utilizing it on chain with a transaction that has commission, then maybe you could get a part of that commission if you're utilizing this channel, right? Maybe that's maybe that's an option, but it leads to centralization of funds. No.
It depends. I mean, once again, we're just brainstorming here. This is just various thoughts that are going into the process here. So we're
No,
not.
I mean, for example, right? In a year, there will be people that will get up and build a decentralized liveness detection mechanism, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of effort. You gotta, create all the framework. You gotta basically train it all the time, and then every single validator is just going to get into the network, is practically going to use that mechanism. And now if those guys receive some fixed rewards from the ecosystem, will it be fair if their delivered public good is used by millions and millions of people?
Just my personal opinion. I mean, there will be those who, in any world, that are just, happy to have their goods, be used by many people. But, obviously, the effort, the training, the education to be able to create that, has cost, time and money. Usually what, in a case of normal corporations, let's say if the inventor gets 3% and the company gets, 97%, that would be a fair deal. And if we have a system where, let's say, we have the decentralized liveness detection that is designed by a person or a group of people, and you have the designer, the inventor of the system, or a team, or however it is decided, earns a certain fixed percentage of the earnings that made in then that would be great incentive. If millions of people used it, and if that was something that was generating extra funds, yes, the community will benefit, but as the inventor, or the core team that had worked on that, if they got something, then that would, I think, it would be considered fair.
Actually, you basically gave me an idea. For example, if someone trying to build something on other networks like Ethereum or Cosmos, even if it's like a scaling solution for the network, they usually end up making their token, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a scaling solution for the original like base token, right? So
Mm-hmm.
why would you make your second token if it's like purely to use this solution?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you gotta buy it separately. And there were like many companies that started out with tokens, but they were rendered completely useless with time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if there was like some kind of for example, let me explain like this. So again, returning to decentralized liveness detection, some guys get up and make this proposal. It goes to Vortex, it's being voted upon, and then it goes to formation to actually seal the funding from the ecosystem and find a team, and that will be hold responsible for development of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they as you said, they probably can stake the amount of commission percentage from transaction that they want to receive in different ways to their wallets for something that they have created. Like, for example, if somebody uses that solution on Humanode and they get like 1% from the commission spent because they've been the ones who created it.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense. And all the transactions and all the the division of the commission between the members happens on chain, and it's all written down, and it happens in the original native token, and that could be very useful. And at the same time, it can solve a problem of the incentive for the people, because I mean, for example, you created a public good, right? And now it's scaled to the system, and the ownership is scaled to every validator inside. And if you have no like incentive, you have to basically to upgrade this public good, because technology always upgrades. You have to make a new proposal again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're a team behind this solution and you're like receiving some percentage of transactions for delivering it to the ecosystem base, basically you don't really have to make new proposals to receive the funding for it, because you're receiving funding for it every single day, every single second, so because somebody is using it.
Yes, I mean, just throwing out random numbers here. But let's say transaction fees. We're envisioning something around, 2% goes to formation, then 98% goes to the community. Now, what if it was like, okay, so 2% goes to formation, 1% or 0.5% or whatever goes to the person or the team, and the rest goes to the community. Just if that is a way to do it, and it would give not only people, it would give possibly dedicated teams ways to actually fund their teams in doing further development.
It really depends on whether the people in the ecosystem are using your service, right?
Yeah,
So
obviously.
if we're talking about some, I don't know, decentralized finance solution where not everyone is using it, you're like kind of giving the commission to the guys only when you're carrying out the service. But I think that like liveness detection is scaled to like everyone, and there's going to be a lot of different biometric modalities in the future, meaning that all of those modalities will have different approaches. They'll have different liveness detection mechanism. We could have people building decentralized biometrics to any modality on human body, and there's like a lot of different teams and services that have to be accommodated for.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
So if we're talking about like co-ownership, like something that is scaled to like everyone, and it's like a very important part of the network, then yes, it would probably go down the way you just stated. But I mean, if it's just a service, then it's probably better for the guys to just create a token on top of this one, and carry out as a separate company, and have their like token allocation and their separate token price for the services that they're running.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's definitely something that we should continue to discuss and get wide opinions on here. But just going back to the very beginning, this concept of co-ownership, how do we really want to describe it? I mean, yes, it is equal share in the pie, where you are a co-owner of everything here. It's not only talking about the products and services, but also certain rights that you enjoy in the community. And what is a good word to describe this?
Like basically the right to participate in Vortex, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like also a co-ownership thing, because it scales to the number of validators inside the network. And as each validator's voting power is equal to 1, it scales equally again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also like co-ownership at the same time. And right to have a legit understanding of what's happening on chain, basically, to be sure that the numbers that you're seeing in front of you are not just some third-party parser of information, but a really delivered audit to you, and you can be sure about what you're seeing in front of you. That's like also co-ownership.
Mm-hmm.
But not really co-ownership, because we don't really want that word, right?
Yeah, we need to find a new word for it. And this is where I hope the community will be able to pitch in here.
I wonder if people really get the idea of this co-ownership, and those people who really want ownership of everything will get the 66% of the votes, and eventually the DAO will be stuck in a situation where it has those people who don't want to give up their ownership, thus they don't want to increase the validator set or like giving out the ownership of technology that they themselves already use, though it was given to them just for participation. They didn't even create it.
But I mean, what is the difference to you if you're like owning it in the same proportion as everyone else at any time? Like, there's no point in time where you have an advantage over anyone, so you don't really care about your percentage of owning something. You care about, you know, the equality between all the owners.
Well, assuming that the people are not dumb, you're right, because when you have a bigger network and more people in it, that means that there is more contribution to the network. We've got this all network effects in terms of fees and security and everything. But I'm just talking about the fact that some people are just thinking, okay, are we to increase the validator set for like for 20%? And then we will be having less fees. Oh my God. And if there are like money-seeking people as the people controlling the networks right now, they are completely for-profit organizations that have their own investors, like proof-of-stake companies or mining pools, mining operators. They would really consider only the financial side, like they're doing right now, and you know, we might face those problems. But I hope we can overcome them with the initial community of thousands of people who were not thinking only about money.
Since we've been going for about 40 minutes now, I was wondering if anybody who are in the chat right now have any questions or thoughts or ideas that they would like to share. And if you are interested, please go ahead and I guess raise your hand in the chat, and we can open this discussion up.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, guys, just go ahead. Well, I guess they don't. So, you know, I was thinking about when should I like. Well, I'm coming to the ecosystem, right? And for example, I'm not going to the proposal pool or Vortex, but I'm creating like we're creating a token with a service, not through, you know, formation or not through the DAO, but, you know, just on top of it, but outside. Do we get any devotion like this? And how is it? How can it be calculated?
Well, from my opinion, it is, they're certainly getting it if their technology is open source, because anybody could use this for the good of the network, and it can probably be even integrated if they contributed to the protocol, for example. But overall, when they build those applications, what they do, they increase the number of fees got by the protocol because they still use it. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of devotion.
Yes, but how do you calculate it? Like, how do you understand whether this is really devotion? I mean, you do understand. Yeah, they did, and you calculated how, like, an ordinary devotion, you know, of participation, formation, but it was not. They didn't participate through formation. They weren't voted upon. They can come and create a black market DeFi platform.
Yeah, that's true. Even they're doing everything on our network, right? Yeah, and in that case, I've got the answer for it, and that yes, in the, you know, opt-in DAO that we will have in the beginning, this is not possible, but we should remember that in the end, the goal of our network is to be like self-accountable economy. And that is where you could derive from that data, like what their devotion was, because you exactly know what contracts they had. And yeah, if they launch the company again on chain.
But okay, and if they're like ZKP based, they don't share, they want to be private, but they're still bringing value. I mean, it's really hard to even tell how to account for the amount of devotion they bring, or if that devotion that they bring is against the will of the majority of Vortex, for example.
Yeah, that would be a tricky situation there. But would you, in that case, would you count it as, credits proof, towards proof of devotion?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if this, let's say this is something that was voted down, let's say continuously by the community, they're not interested, but you go ahead and create it and fund it on your own and do it, and it runs on top of the system. Would you, and let's say a person is involved in governance in the future or doing other things, would that project be counted towards proof of devotion or not? And my guess would be not really, but I don't know if it turns out to bring major benefits to the community. I guess it could be. It's one of those cases where it's really hard to tell.
You got to calculate the fish until you let them in the tank. So
yeah,
when it's out there, it's just the amount of direct and like adjusting devotion that it brings and like value is it can't be really calculated.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's true, because they like in their situation, when they register that off chain, they can say like, oh, we didn't knew about that, and we just couldn't go and tell about that before doing that. And it sounds kind of strange, because if you build something on a protocol and you really share everything the same, you propose it directly, you don't do that OTC, so to say. And yeah, that was his choice to do that, because if he did something over the protocol, he knows how the protocol works in the DAO, and it was his choice. That's it. Probably we should like type this rule for people to get it and not to be like exhausted after doing something off chain.
Okay, I have a case for you. Okay, so the guy comes in to proposal, right? Paul. He creates a very wonderful proposal about creating like a liquidity providing platform, but we just and he asks for like the investment support from the ecosystem, so that Formation gives him money to assemble the team and build it, and Vortex says no, or his pull request never got up, to the Vortex itself to be even voted upon. And then he goes, creates a token on top of you, creates the service, and everyone uses it. This is like, it's very, very hard to calculate the amount of, the devotion the guy's bringing, because we kind of said no, but he still built it without the support of the community, but for it.
well, then he's a hero.
That's not enough.
Well, just, I'm assuming that he built a token on top of it. He's receiving benefits from that. He's providing to the community through his services, and the fruits that he got through his token is his, and the services, and the fruits from the community, is equally shared, which he gets, an equal portion of.
Well, it's it can be achievable, I guess. Well, but it's still a dilemma.
It is a dilemma, indeed.
So we've got like 9 minutes left, and that's how I propose to start to talk about what we do next time together with the people we have here, and discuss it openly, because I have some ideas of that. I mean, we've got a bunch of dilemmas in different kind of sciences, and for a small talk of 15 minutes, we can bring up people with whom we had reasonable talks on the topic before, and we understand that they can bring. So, for example, with our few of our new partners here, for the next time.
That's true. I mean, Victor, who would you propose, just to throw out a couple topics and see if anybody here would like to raise their hand to say, I want to hear this talk, or I want to hear, more about this theme. I mean, obviously we can talk about, IPFS, we can talk about cryptography, we can, go more into liveness detection, what other themes are you thinking of, Victor?
Well, I'm thinking of things just like today, and not on the technology topics even. I would like to raise the questions that everybody understands, because this is the core processes of how we live, operate, and I would like to discuss the things like we discussed here today, because there are a lot of angles from which we could look at it differently each time, and have the dilemmas that we can solve with people, in inviting those people who pretty people from good companies. That's what I'm telling you about, or who are pretty well known to discuss it with it for people, and then eventually telling them exactly, for example, what dilemma we're going to solve, right? Or from which angle, probably, legal angle is what I want to discuss, and a lot of people love that too a lot, because that's what gets us to the adoption of a new schemes of governance over assets.
Now, reaching out to the remainder of our listeners here, does anybody else have any specific angle that they would like to discuss this about? If not, then I guess we'll just have to get together and see who we can pull out of the hat. Dato, do you have any closing remarks?
If they're not going to vote, I'm going to talk about Europa Universalis on the next call.
Yes, for those of you who do not know, we've been at war with Portugal and Spain, playing as
Oh, you really started it, Shannon.
playing as Native American
Uh-huh.
Indian tribes in EU4.
Yeah, but that's not a topic. So, the co-ownership is is the smart contract stack really that we gotta realize, and put together, and we gotta understand the intricacies behind it, and build a proper architecture so that it can be scalable. The bandwidth can be the biggest case because it's constantly changing. It should be almost liquid. Well, in terms of the validators coming in and coming out all the time, and it's a technological challenge to all other technological stacks that we are already implementing. But if we can deliver this, we can deliver instantly distributed right/public good to everyone in the system, and it will be equal. And I mean, yeah, I know that's do I have to say this? But for example, if a government, right, if a government decides to implement, decentralized identity, like Humanode that has nodes now, it would just scale the rights, the government scale on you the way they do already, and any rights or obligations, and basically they can be always verifiable, and you truly directly control that thing as a kind of citizen. Don't you think this has sense?
Well, I mean, we're talking about a citizen as a citizen of the world here. So yes,
Well,
I mean, yeah.
if you're talking about the human network itself, well, it's not a government, right? But I mean, if a government decides to scale like one human, one node system on their whole population, so that they could deliver rights and obligations, and the ownership of public goods, the right to demand something from the government or anything in this way, and it can always be auditable and verifiable. It could be a really good liberal democratic change for any government out there.
True.
I'm looking at you, Sweden.
it it would be interesting to see how many countries will be interested in experimenting. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the smaller countries wouldn't want to try
like
it out.
Sealand.
Yeah. Okay, so looks like we're running out of time here. Thank you very much, all of you coming and joining our first Fireside.
And I would like to tell you, Shannon, that unfortunately, when you have adoption in the countries like Sealand, well, this is not adoption. Nobody cares about this stuff, even if you successfully implemented a project there.
I mean, it's a country.
Yeah, hey, it's what is always important in any project that I've done. It's to be able to do proof of concept, and if it successfully manage to do a POC or two, a proof of concept project that works, and you can prove that it's scalable, others will start to join in.
So proof of concept cannot be scalable, Shannon. Because it's proof of concept.
Proof of concept will be scalable. It actually quite often is, depending on your network.
Well, yeah. but you'll have to have more modules there.
True. Technological challenges.
So thank you everyone for attending this. We're kind of gonna sit here, I guess, and just talk about other stuff. So if you want to go, you can go, because we're not going to talk about co-ownership. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, and we'll repeat it next week, probably same time, or if you tell us that's not a good time for you, we can change it to different regions from time to time as well.
This is going to be different. Thanks. But Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, just one thing to remind our friends here is that yes, we will be bringing up a new topic or having a new chat once every 2 weeks. We hope more and more of you will join, and remember, after 30 or 40 minutes, we'll be opening the floor to everybody here. So if you have any questions, comments, ideas, you're more than welcome to contribute. And one of the key things in Humanode is, we rely on the contribution of everybody. And the more you contribute, the better. So, yes, I hope to see you next time too.